Hello and welcome to Ethereum Classic Community Call number 43. Today is the 5th of December 2025. As usual, please remember we're going to post this call on YouTube, so let's be excellent to each other. This week, we'll be continuing discussion about implementing EIP 1559, a compatible mechanism for Ethereum Classic. In our previous call, the Olympia authors agreed to dive a bit deeper into ECIP 1113, Olympia's proposed governance system. Before we dive into this topic, I just wanted to start by mentioning that a pull request for ECIP 1120 has been created. 1120 is authored by myself, Istora, and ETC developer Diego. 1120 outlines a vision for a minimally complex 1559-like implementation that returns all the fees to miners with a simple algorithmic protocol-native mechanism. More on this ECIP in perhaps a future call. Since we've already agreed to have this call focus on 1113, let's make the best use of the time and talk about that. So, yeah, we have on the call Wiedergarten. Would you like to say hello?
Yeah, hello. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back on one of these calls. I would be glad to contribute my thoughts to this discussion. I'm not. I wouldn't say that I'm technical in the sense of the chain itself in terms of the in terms of implementations, but I'm able to generally understand what EIPs mean and how they might affect the decentralized finance sector on a given chain. So I feel like I might have some valuable things to say on that.
Awesome. And you've been around with the ETC ecosystem for a number of years, I guess, and have been on previous calls. So it's good to have you back.
Thank you, and thank you for continuing to host these. It's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be increasingly important in the coming months and next year specifically because of this debate that's unfolding about 1559. And I guess just to bring you up to speed and others listening, that so far we've had one proposal in the form of the Olympia set of proposals, which is basically implementing 1559 by redirecting the base fee to a treasury system. And the idea of this call was hopefully to get more in depth about how that treasury system is going to be governed. And we were hoping to get the author of that proposal, Chris Murtha, on the call. I believe he was supposed to join, but maybe he'll join a bit later as he did last time. But in the meantime, I guess I can put my thoughts forward and maybe we can discuss between us two about the pros and cons of this approach.
So
But
I didn't listen to the last call. Could you please resume like what Chris Mercer shared last time, just generally, what his what he had to say and how he felt about other people in regards to his own proposal?
yeah, let me just pull up there's an AI generated summary if I can find the community call last week. Yeah, so this is community call 42. The key takeaways are we discussed 1559 and four options were considered, including for the distribution mechanism, like smoothing over blocks. So just for an overview, 1559 adds this new type of transaction called type 2 transaction, which allows end users to, instead of doing an auction for the gas price, the gas fee that they'd be paying for transactions, which can be difficult to figure out, like often people are overpaying. So instead of that, 1559 introduces this base fee algorithmic system, which allows you to more predictably price your transactions. And this provides better user experience. And the result of that is that there's a base fee where they're all priced the same basically. And that fee would normally go to miners in the current system, but for technical reasons, they cannot go to miners in the same block on Ethereum Classic. For there's some game theory problems with giving it to miners directly in the same block. So Olympia on Ethereum, they burn it. On Ethereum Classic, we can't do that because it affects the emission curve. If we burn things, it messes with the economics. And also, in my opinion, we want to incentivize miners as much as possible. So burning that would kind of reduce the security budget when we could, in fact, be returning that to miners and making it more, increasing the incentive to mine Ethereum Classic. So Olympia, which is Chris Mercer's set of proposals, ECIP 1111 to 1115, suggests that these funds are redirected to a treasury with an on-chain voting mechanism. And that would basically be a DAO that has proposals and funds projects. So those fees would be used not to fund mining, but to fund development in the ecosystem. Another approach is an algorithmic return to miners over the course of a number of blocks. So that sidesteps the issue with returning all the funds to the miners in the same block by kind of dividing up the base fee and giving it to miners over, let's say, 100 blocks in the future. And basically, we were getting near the end of that previous call into the details of the Olympia governance system, which in my opinion are kind of important to get like a good understanding of before we determine whether or not Olympia itself is feasible. So unless there's like at least one decent proposal for a governance system that can bootstrap this new DAO, it's going to be difficult to figure out how we can actually deploy that in a protocol neutral and sufficiently decentralized way.
I think it's interesting how you talk about the governance system, because it's quite it does quite present a number of challenges, because we're talking about having a centralized way of giving funds out, but at the same time, we also want to. It's centralized in the sense that the funds are being pooled centrally, and so things on chain can be centralized in a sense. But what makes things decentralized is how you delegate the power over that fund. And so there is a lot of possibilities that you could look into, but right now, from what I can tell, it's a quite unspecified and still very up for debate at the minimum. This specific part of those proposals, and when I look into it, there's a few options. The main option would be to give power to all ETC holders, like giving a vote specifically to, depending on how much ETC you have, you can use that to vote, or it could be by the miners, for example. There's quite a few options, and so it would be important that before anything like this actually gets implemented, that these are properly debated through, because whatever system, if there is a governance system that does end up being implemented for this, you would have to consider all of the implications of what system you're implementing and what the alternatives might offer, and obviously the alternative of not having a governance system and not having a central fund. In response to that, as sort of a comparison, you need to look at every single at all the details before you come to a conclusion. But the general, I understand why Christopher Mercer has brought up this this proposal and his positioning in regards to the co-op no longer kind of existing, or it exists on a low power mode, but there isn't really that branch of the outreach anymore. It's really just a small entity now, and the kind of wanting or the willingness to kind of replace that or find a way to kind of move the protocol forward. But I continue to always say that I believe in the free market and in free market principles, and if there's really a demand and a need for changes to the protocol, and it requires funding for developers, then I think that Ethereum Classic, if we don't implement bureaucracy, then no matter what, if we do manage to find a solution through the free market, it will be the most efficient and the most cost efficient, and it will be from a member of the community or members of the community that have been around for a long time. And it would be a collective effort that would require collective participation instead of basically what is being proposed through the ECIP 111 and through ECIP 1114. is effectively taxing transactions. I know that that is up for debate, and I will concede that. But from my perspective, as a user of ETC, and as someone who likes to build on ETC and who sees a long-term future in ETC, when users make transactions, they expect that when whatever fees that they're paying goes directly to the miners in order to secure the blockchain, to make sure that that transaction is as legitimate as it is. They do not want to have to contribute to a central treasury. And no matter how you might want to frame it, but if we make type 2 transactions automatically contribute to a treasury, there is some deviation of funds that could be going to miners. You could be saying that, oh, well, the funds would either be burned. Well, there is funds that could either not exist or go to miners, and that those funds are instead going to a pool that now has to have a whole new set of bureaucracy sort of implemented in order to manage that. And I don't see why miners or Ethereum Classic users would see this as a beneficial system, especially when they've in the past rejected very similar proposals and very similar systems that would effectively have a governance system or some kind of central funding system that uses taxes specifically on transactions to fund it. So personally, I don't support these proposals, but I would like to, at least at the minimum, allow for further discussion and really get to fully understand the proposals in their full depth, and then put them up against whatever, say, alternative proposal you might say. And I think, Astora, you put up a proposal. I wouldn't say it's sort of a counter proposal, but it's more another path forward that we could take. I don't know if you would agree with that, but would you say that it's sort of a different approach to the same kind of problem, or at least to the problem of type 2 transactions?
Yeah, exactly. The goal of 1120 is to figure out what's like the bare minimum complexity that we can possibly find a path to in order to support this new type 2 transaction. And that is without any additional like contracts or without any additional state on chain. So it's like, yeah, there's we can probably go into more of the technical details on a later call, but yeah, the general approach is that we wanted to find something that doesn't add complexity and is something that is pretty easy to explain relative to more complex systems. And I just wanted to make a few comments on your last piece. So yeah, I agree that further discussion is definitely necessary. And I just hope we can have this discussion without feeling like either side of the debate is necessarily rushing or trying to push or announce things before they're actually decided. I think that might poison the discussion if we kind of pressure ourselves into going one path or another because of like external things happening in the social side. And really, we should focus on what's technically best for Ethereum Classic. It is indeed true that similar systems have been rejected in the past. There were two treasury proposals in the past that were rejected. One of them more recently that might be in memory was in 2020, I believe. And that was a large debate and a large corpus of arguments against the idea of a protocol layer treasury, which Olympia also is. Miners won't see it as being beneficial is absolutely correct. And I just don't see how miners would vote for a treasury proposal that takes away funds that would otherwise be going to them. It is a kind of tax in that compared to the current system, all of those transaction fees are going to the miners directly, and it is kind of changing the contract. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a rug pull necessarily, but it is kind of like, hey, the miners have agreed that they're mining this chain and they're expecting all these transactions to go to them in the future. The future sort of security of the chain will eventually rely more on transaction fees. And miners have kind of made this investment in hardware. And it will be quite a difficult sell, I think, to get them to mine a chain that undermines that investment. I think the free market is definitely the way to go. And the way I'd like to see things move forward with these kind of DAOs is deploy one, right? See if it works, get funding. It doesn't have to be a lot, just show that the process works. And then if you've proven that it works and that, these DAOs can actually achieve what they're claiming to, then we can think about integrating one in the protocol. But so far, I haven't seen one that's actually successful, gets engagement, and isn't gameable in a way that would make it secure enough to put into the protocol like that. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on what you just said.
Well, I'll pick up quickly, and I want to let Justin J pick in because I saw him turn on his microphone earlier if he's interested. But I just wanted to add quickly that I agree with what you're saying, and what you said regarding the free market is correct, because what is trying to be implemented through ECIP 111, 1111, and 1114 is effectively a centralized, or at least not a centralized, but a treasury system that that is supposed to be decentralized. But the what makes something decentralized is who is voluntary participation, and people can participate in Bitcoin, people can participate in Ethereum Classic, or they can choose another chain. That's what makes it decentralized. But if for whatever reason Ethereum Classic is an important blockchain in the future, and people are sort of forced to use it because it is advantageous over other mechanisms, they will inherently be forced to use a blockchain that has this system. So if this system, for whatever reason, is detrimental and doesn't position Ethereum Classic in the same way in the future, because people are looking for a real free market proponent, as sort of a real blockchain that has real long-term sustainable, using proof of work, using smart contracts, that is the original Ethereum. If this is something that people want, they may feel that that might be poisoned by having a treasury on chain. But I counter that in saying that if anybody who believes that a treasury, some kind of central funding that specifically for protocol, is not necessarily a bad idea, but it should be done using smart contracts on chain. Anybody is allowed to go and do that. I could decide to do that. Anybody, the people who are making Olympia could decide to do that, or anybody else in the world could decide that tomorrow they're going to build what they're talking about, a governance system on chain, where they are actively seeking for people who have a collective interest in funding whatever it is that these ECIPs are proposing to fix. And so if we need these solutions to, say, fund further ETC development at the core level, or whatever it is that they need the funding for, there will be free market proponents that will come into the game, and it's not difficult for them to come together and collectively pay for that. That's what Ethereum Classic is designed to do. And so it's kind of strange for us to kind of mediate away from that to kind of a more traditional kind of bureaucratic kind of way of funding things, when instead we could allow the free market to decide what is best for the chain, and that will ultimately lead to the best outcome for both the users, the miners, and the people who have a long-term investment in Ethereum Classic. So I would like to let Justin J pitch in, but just generally, it's better to keep ETC OG, and I really think that we could lose some of our status if we allow for a treasury system on ETC. I prefer to be a little blunt sometimes, but that's how I feel. Justin J, are you there?
Yeah, what's going on, guys?
Hey,
Hello?
Justin.
Hello?
Hey, I can hear you.
Hello? Oh, hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Sorry. Yeah, it's going all right. I've been listening to you guys, and like I haven't reviewed the whole ECIP set, but like I got a gist of everything because I've been kind of busy doing other stuff. But yeah, I think I don't know. My suggestion with that would be probably the clients somehow, but then like the fund should probably stay with the miners for, like for now. Yeah,
Right.
I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how the process like technically it would be handled, but then my concern is with just the way this ECIP is being handled is just kind of odd, and the what is being suggested for the ECIP, I guess. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, could you uh just for the listeners, Justin, could you introduce yourself a little bit and explain how your role in ETC
Oh,
is?
okay.
Uh, and then also could you
A role in EDC.
elaborate?
I don't really have a role. I don't really have a role in EDC. I just yeah, I've been in with the EDC for a bit, maybe since 2017, 2016, around there. But then I only got active on social media after maybe 17, 18, whatever. But yeah, just I
And
followed
you've been
ETC.
helping with
Sorry?
the Discord, right?
Yes, I have. Just trying to do my best to keep everything organized, but yeah, it kind of gets out of hand sometimes. And yeah, it's just maybe it's personnel thing, but it is what it is. We just push forward. That's it.
Yeah, your
Yeah. So,
contributions are much
yeah.
appreciated.
Oh, thank you. But
I,
yeah, so yeah.
you mentioned that you feel that the ECIP is being handled in a strange way or something like that. Could you elaborate on
Yeah,
what you
it's
mean by
just
that?
uh yeah. Well, it should be more of like a discussion topic, not like a force. Okay, we're gonna be moving to this kind of thing. And I seen some ads, and then I have this system I made that it just picks up like the news and stuff, and then it just like what it reads is just weird. Like it's yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to. Yeah, I don't
No,
want
I
to.
totally agree. And it's one of the main concerns I have with how this ECIP has been marketed is that it's been announced as if it's a done deal, as if it's definitely happening, as if we're implementing this Olympia system.
Mm-hmm,
Announcements have been made on certain websites like CoinMarketCap, and it's like
mm-hmm.
this kind of undermines the whole process that's supposed to exist in order to gain consensus. And if it really
Mm-hmm.
risks creating like bad outcomes if we do not all come to the same page and kind of disregard each other's ideas about how things should be going because um, yeah, you really need everyone to be in agreement for these hard
Yes.
forks to be clean.
For sure. Yeah, like there should be more unity. But like I've been in ETC for a bit. I know how it is, but it just it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it is indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for joining the call, and yeah, it's great to have the voices of our contributors heard. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you guys. You guys been doing a lot. I've been trying to keep up with you guys, but I'm not I guess technically advanced as you guys, but yeah, doing my best. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a complicated topic, and uh,
Yeah.
that does create some barriers, but it doesn't prevent people from getting their voices across. So I'm glad you did decide to
Well,
do
for
that.
sure.
Just to pick up on a thread that Wiedegarte mentioned before, and I wanted to reinforce that, which is the uh, first the idea that the free market should be the way we do this and launching DAOs. The issue is actually not that there's no funding. In fact, only a couple of years ago, Bitmain committed 10 million US dollars of ETC, which is still sitting in a multi-sig contract. So the issue is not the funding itself, it's how those funds are distributed. And in fact, the Olympia proposal is not going to be getting that much in terms of funding because of the base fee being quite low at the moment. We're talking like 50K US dollars per year, at least currently. So there's no like critical funding operations that it can be achieving in the next, let's say, short term. So that's one thing, and that means there's competition. There's time to create the best possible DAO, if that's what you want to do, to distribute funds on chain first, and then basically try to petition Bitmain to get some funding in order to prove that your DAO is good enough, at least for that. And I think the bar for having it as a protocol level should be much higher than that. Secondly, let's just talk about the problem that you alluded to, Wedergarten, with governance. And here's a super simple example. Right now, there's not a ton of people actively involved in ETC. Let's say this DAO was launched next year, as was planned by Chris Mercer's proposal, and it's initially bootstrapped with some kind of voting proposal, some kind of voting system. Now, it wouldn't be a coin vote. Let's say it's some kind of reputation system, and let's say it's perfect reputation system imaginable. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that only good actors to start off with are given this ability to vote on proposals and, importantly, upgrade the DAO code itself, because that's part of the proposal. There needs to be a way to upgrade the governance system itself. And let's say in 3 years' time, there's even fewer people, and a handful of those people decide, okay, we need to upgrade the DAO, and we're going to turn it into a multi-sig. And we're going to basically own the DAO forever going forward. Now, that's something that's totally possible in the paradigm of what's been proposed in Olympia. And it's something that is obviously not compatible with the decentralized requirements for Ethereum Classic. And there's no proposal, there's no talk about how that kind of scenario can be prevented. And in fact, I think that kind of scenario is unpreventable in a simple, like the issue is how you seed the original holders. And you can't really do an ICO, you can't do a pre-sale. You're going to have to figure out how to ensure that not just at the start, but on an ongoing process, you do not end up in a situation where a handful of people effectively control the ability to upgrade the DAO. And that's something I've not seen an answer to yet. And I was hoping that in this call we could get more into detail on that with regards to 1113. But yeah, those questions remain unanswered. And until they are answered, I don't think we can look at this as a serious proposal, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just gonna say that there's I'm gonna play maybe not devil's advocate, but Chris Mercer's advocate, and say that if he was here, he may join. He would counter that by saying that that the proposal that it wouldn't be just like a few people managing it. And he would probably say something like it would be a governance system that incorporates everyone down probably to the token holder. But it is an interesting discussion to have about governance because, for example, if you had as you had your example of just having only the fair actors vote on it, that's not like a realistic system. And even if it was, you're right, it would there's a real chance that it could devolve into the future, and just opening that door and the possibility to that is bad. But then if you take it to the more realistic scenario of the fact that you're taxing effectively miners and you're taxing coin hold any participants that use the transaction network on ETC, the more transactions they do, the more they get taxed, and the more and the miners effectively, the more they mine, the more they get taxed. It's not that they get taxed more by their mining, but it's just that the overall amount of tax does increase if they're mining more, and that does create additional contributions to the treasury. But what's interesting is that if you were to implement the system where it would be all token holders, it would be very difficult to have everybody part, like a very good quorum and a very good representation from everybody around the chain, because people aren't necessarily going to go and vote with their wallet, and you would have to have a new system to be able to vote with tokens that you already have in your wallet that doesn't involve any transactions such as moving the tokens. So that's a whole new like question how do you sign for those transactions, track which ETC have been used. Like what if I vote for something and then I move the ETC to another wallet on the same proposal the next day? You have to, there's all these questions that begin, you open a whole new box of questions when you do that. And then you consider, well, okay, maybe then we don't want to have every ETC holder be a participant. Then you have to decide, well, who do we give priority on voting? Do we give it to the miners? Well, is that such a great idea? Because then there's no representation from the users of the chain, from the DeFi users, or from the people that are just transacting between each other. And there's no representation from other proponents, such as entities. It's just the miners. And then vice versa, if you make it some kind of on-chain DAO where people sort of buy into it and then they kind of have control over it, which, this sounds terrible, but that's as an alternative to like giving every coin holder veto power. If you were to make it so that people are effectively buying into it and then that's how they gain control, well, that creates sort of a whole new box of problems where people who have tokens, who are paying the taxes, are not having any representation. And at the same time, there's sort of a group of elites who are making all the decisions because maybe they bought in early and they have more power. So basically what I'm trying to say is that if you were to implement EIP 1111 through 1114, you would have to answer a whole lot of questions. And so far, every question that I put forward, and I know other people have put forward, has been answered in sort of like a ChatGPT little matrix box where there's like the small question and then like like a 10-word answer to like the solution to all of it. And then if you ask further questions, you're just some kind of mad hater man. So that's my experience so far with these EIPs. So I wouldn't go around saying, oh, we should take this seriously or say that seriously. I would say that it's more that we need to educate everybody who has a say on these things about the details of each proposal. And if there's missing parts to the proposal, such as AKA the governance, I've been asking for a while, and it's interesting because we hear that these things are moving to Mordor testnet. Like that's what the announcements are.
Right.
But there's no information anywhere about what's being published or where exactly it is. And there's no, then you would obviously think that they must be putting like the Olympia DAO on Mordor so that they could do the testing of the governance, but there's no information about the governance anywhere. So there's a few missing points that I would personally like to see filled, and then we can have a real full discussion about what would this actually mean in the future. But so far, what I see is if this is truly the way that from what I understand it is going to be implemented on type 2 transactions, then it does sort of implement a tax on miners, and it does implement a bit of a tax on users of the chain. So ultimately, it's not going to be generally beneficial and seen as a free market move for ETC. So we're good. I hope that we can have like further discussions, and that in the next call we can have many more people. I think that the more people in the discussions and the more recorded discussions that we have, the more we can just show how people feel about this proposal. If they think it's good, then we can really get a good tally. We don't have to vote on a DAO, but we could do an informal vote, just to get an idea of how people feel. And some people might be feel free to call out that vote as being a scummy, but we can organize and we can talk about these things. And that's what I think we should focus on in the coming months. And I appreciate Istora for I think it's the third month in a row now that we have a call. And I'm glad that we're getting back into it, and I'm here and ready to do whatever is necessary so that we can continue having these discussions regularly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm trying to make something for I guess ETC, but it's taking a bit because my technical skills, but it's coming along.
Oh yeah, what's the nature of that?
Sorry. Oh,
You,
on my project.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's okay. I'll give you some. There's gonna be NFT, but then obviously I'm not gonna do. It's not gonna be like the ones that happened before, I guess, or whatever. Hopefully. And it's something to make community, I guess, right? To
Cool.
gather community and stuff like that for me, anyways. And it's gonna have some AI stuff in there, so it might be interesting.
Yeah, you gotta have the AI these days. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Like
Yep.
I wish I hope everybody that comes into ETC knows about AI. That'd be awesome.
Right. I was just on the call with Cody before this call. There's like a 1 hour before we have the green room if you'd like to join us next time for an offline chat. But he was mentioning about his efforts with the new client that is in a work in progress, which is a Scala based Ethereum Classic client. And he's basically used exclusively agentic coding to build this thing, to upgrade it from where it was a few years ago. And it's now syncing with Ethereum. It's the Ethereum Classic mainnet. So it's amazing what we can do with these tools. And
Mm,
it really
wow.
gives a lot of hope for
Hmm.
Ethereum Classic and projects that don't have necessarily tons of developers. We actually won't need them anymore in the future because we can get agents to do a lot of this, I guess, monkey work that would previously require a lot of time and coding. So
Yeah, the maintenance. Yeah.
yeah, it's actually really good for Ethereum Classic.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't know Cody Burns is was that his client the Fukui or something like that? Is
That's
that the
right.
one you're talking about? Yeah,
Yeah, Fukui.
I didn't know that was yeah, that has AI integrated in there, or sorry,
Well,
was it made?
he used AI to build it.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, it can do that. That's pretty
Oh
neat.
yeah.
Well,
I
I'm sure he put his input in there as well, right? Because I don't think yeah,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
unless he's using a pretty good tiered AI. Yeah.
So definitely the
Oh, that's
architecture
awesome.
and directing what needs to be done is specialist
Hmm.
knowledge that Cody has. So it's not like anyone could
Yeah,
have
for
done that,
sure.
but it definitely
Exactly.
saved him a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I
Wow, that's
recommend looking
awesome.
into if you're interested in AI coding, take a look at Claude Code, which is like the CLI coding editor, which is really powerful
Yeah,
and one
yeah,
of my
but then
favorites.
I don't like those CLI edit because that's I don't know
Yeah.
I don't use those because apparently you can change over your whole yeah your
Yeah,
setup and all that stuff.
you need to take
Yeah,
precautions. You need to take precautions.
yeah,
But it's quite
yeah. I
complicated
never
to do it
use
safely.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with Wiedegotten about getting more people involved and also getting some kind of voting mechanism set up, even if it's just like a list of active participants and their opinions, because it's really difficult to judge where the community is at any given time on any particular topic based on like who's watching videos or liking tweets. So it'd be great if we could somehow put together some like informal voting system just to get a kind of check of where the wind is blowing on some of these topics. And and yeah, the idea of doing like all token holders voting on stuff is probably not going to work, not least because there's too many people and I don't think Ethereum Classic can actually handle like every single token fold, every single holder voting on every single proposal. So there needed to be some kind of like representative system or something like that. Like it's just not, I don't think you can scale to give everyone representation in that way. And if you're not doing that, I mean, even if you did a simple coin vote, it's still not like a fair representation of everyone. Like, why should some whale that's just bought a bunch of ETC have more decision-making power than some like less wealthy but 1,000 times more involved guy that doesn't even hold ETC, for example, or perhaps holds a tiny amount. Like, surely it should be representation based on something other than just the amount of ETC you hold. And that's kind of what's, I guess, being alluded to in 1113, but there's no concrete proposals. And yeah, we really need to, you know, show that at least one version of this is possible before moving forward, and definitely before announcing all this stuff. I did, like, at the end of the last call, I believe November, earlier in November, Chris made another set of commits to the Olympia ECIPs, and it was kind of like a checkpoint. And I made a comment in response to that that hasn't been responded to yet. So I thought I could just mention my questions at the end of this call, and maybe if you have comments, we can talk about them, or maybe wrap up after. But I had like 5 questions I think need answering before we can really agree to move forward with Olympia. Like, I think they're pretty important. So question 1 is, do you agree that a bootstrap governance and voting rights distribution system must be clearly defined in ECIP 1113? Question 2 is, do you agree that validating such a system requires real-world testnet deployment? Question 3 is, do you agree that 111 depends on 1112, which depends on 1113, and that these 3 ECIPs are interdependent? Question 4, do you agree that 111 should not be deployed unless 1113 is approved and viable? And then finally, for the next call, I asked if you could propose some potential anti-Sybil or fair distribution systems. For example, one of the mechanisms that was mentioned in the ECIP in 113 was POAP-based voting, but I'm not sure that's relevant, because unless there's any real-world events that Ethereum Classic participants are going to, who is the authority for that is one question, and which events are we talking about is another. So those are my 5 questions, and they remain unanswered. And I'm hoping that in order to progress the discussion on Olympia, we can get those questions answered.
I appreciate all the work that's been done in the GitHub discussion. There's been lots of discussion there, and it's a very plain, open, like long form discussion about basically different ECIPs. So it's a good place for people to go and put into words things that you might say on a call like this. And I just took a look at the questions at your post, and I think that these are very basic, very straightforward questions regarding what the implementation is going to look like. And ultimately, from my perspective, if these questions can't be answered like even in a minimal technical specific way, like I don't see how someone could then, without even being able to answer those questions, be able to implement all of the things that, they're talking about that have, yet to be specified. It seems more like, these are things that are being pushed to be done, but there's still a lot of lack of actual implementation specification. And as I said earlier, these things are supposed to be moving to Mordor testnet. So I actually asked that months ago, like, can you send me, like, where's the implementation, like, information about this? But I'm a very bad person to the person who made Olympia. So I'm not going to get those questions answered anytime soon, but I hope others can pursue those similar questions, like the ones that you put forward. And I'm personally, I'll do what I can to, step back from the discussion and really just interject when I feel that it has some kind of effect on the DeFi space and the potential future of Ethereum Classic, and specifically how it fits into today's world. But I was going to ask you, Istora, can you please tell me a little bit more about the proposal that you have for countering it? So how exactly do you plan to send them back to the miners without inside the same block? Like, is this still kind of up for debate and still figuring it out, or have you or is there a previous implementation that you're referring to, or is this a brand new implementation, and where's the progress on that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's an open pull request for 11120. In that PR is also a link to a research site, which is ecip1120.dev. There's a lot more explanation and the current working rationale and the current research tasks that are ongoing. There are some things that need to be finalized that will depend on like client resource constraints and that kind of stuff, but we more or less have a really good idea of what needs to be done. And the mechanism for distributing fees back to miners is known as a backwards looking stateless fee distribution. So this was originally proposed by Diego, the maintainer of Cool Geth, and there is actually an implementation already in Besu. So you can find the link of that within that documentation site. That was done a couple of years ago. Essentially, all that's happening, and we still need to figure out these exact variables, but over the course of, let's say, 50 blocks, a block gets mined, and the base fee, instead of being given to that individual miner, is simply split up over the next 50 blocks and distributed equally to all the future miners. It's actually done by looking backwards. So there's technical reasons why it's done like this. It basically makes reorgs easier. Instead of having an accumulated value, you just look at the previous blocks and then take a distribution from those blocks. So the other question is, do we have this as a linear distribution, or do we have some kind of decay curve? But these are research questions that we'll hopefully have answered in the coming months. But basically, it's a really quite simple implementation that makes it compatible with Ethereum Classic without burning the fees. We return it to miners, and some pretty good academic research that's gone into this mechanism. So it seems like this is the most simple approach, and it's not that complicated to spec out. Currently, this PR has been blocked by Chris Mercer. I made a pull request, and he's claiming that it can't be published until we actually have all the values. But these are kind of ongoing research tasks that might take a few months. So hopefully we can at least get the work in progress version up on the ETC ECIP website. But until one of the other ECIP maintainers approves it, then it will just remain on that ECIP1120.dev website, which you can also follow for updates. And there's also an article on there under why not Olympia? And out there, I outline a number of arguments that we've partly covered in this call and more about why I think that having this this proposal is not the right path forward for Ethereum Classic. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about 1120. As I have some more time.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just scrolling through the ECIP that you made just to see like what has been written and also why it's been not rejected but been held back. I'm just curious. Two things. First, has the ECIPs for 111 been passed? Like, have they been approved past this stage already? In the sense, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of hard to tell. Yeah. Would you be able to tell me that?
Those original, sorry, the Olympia set.
Yeah.
The issue is not that they're being like progressed through the ECIP process. Like as we've already discussed, the Olympia set already has many missing variables. Nonetheless, like in the spirit of like open discussion, those proposals have been allowed to be published on the website, and they're in draft, which is one stage ahead of work in progress. And the ECIP 1120 is only a work in progress, But the issue is that it's been blocked from even being published.
Right. But I guess my question then would be, in what way is your proposal less technically defined than the Olympia set of proposals? Because from what I understand, from what I read, it's at a minimum, it's the same, if not yours has a little bit more like specific detail as how it's going to be done. Olympia has a lot more open-ended questions than questions that would have just sending back to the miners, which is effectively a continuation of what we have today, just a little bit with a more spicy process. But yeah, like what's the difference in the technical specifications? Why would yours be not allowed, but the others be allowed?
Yeah, I submitted it with the assumption that it would be approved because I don't see why it wouldn't be. Um, I don't think there's any requirement to ensure that everything is finalized, especially when it's a work in progress. Like, isn't that the point of a work in progress? You still have things that you need to finalize. But I guess Chris Mercer, the author of Olympia, set proposals, feels like that this is a requirement. So we'll see.
So I'm just curious. So this is for the ECIPs. Basically, this just goes to the website, and you see like what's our drafts and which are implemented. So it doesn't. It's more just to see like what's been proposed and what's been defined as completed. And so I assume that, and as you said, as you assume that it would be approved. As I understand it, that it would be basically like a draft EIP in the same. Would be once it would be approved, it would effectively be in the same range as the Olympia set. Is that correct?
It would actually be one stage less mature than Olympia. So the process is WIP, work in progress, then draft, then I believe it's final call, and then it's approved, and then after that it gets like implemented and then adopted into the protocol. So really this is at this stage it's saying like here's an idea, let's make people aware that this is a thing, and if people want to help contribute it and move it into draft status when it's ready, we can do that. So it's more of like a signaling thing as opposed to any uh, like by approving it in work in progress, it's by no means saying like this is gonna happen. It's really just like listing it on the website.
So I just want to also confirm. So this is for the ECIP's website. But if any changes that would be made to the chain would be made effectively through a change to the client by effectively changing what the pointed the next upgrade, correct?
Yeah, so once an ECIP moves from final call to accepted, then the client maintainers can implement this. Like a future block would be agreed upon to be an activation block, and if all things go well, then basically the new code would start being implemented after start being activated after that particular block. And there's a whole kind of if you're if you're interested in the process, you can check out ECIP 1000, which explains in detail about how different stages are reached and how things are progressed. And yeah, it requires rough consensus to move from uh, uh, to become an actual thing in the clients, shall we say. And
So
the ECIP process is more, whilst it is a formal way of coming to an agreement about what the protocol should, how it should behave, it still relies on other things. It's not like an ultimate authority, because what if clients don't implement it? What if miners don't mine that chain? Like it's only really a way for developers to say this is what we think should happen. And it's up to miners and implementers and users to actually make that happen.
So I'm just asking because if, like, for example, your proposal or for the Olympia set of proposals were to move forward to the point where they're being published to the client, at what point do the miners get like to decide what they accept and what they don't? I assume it's not when they, even if they upgrade the client, they can change it. It's the decision point is whether or not they upgrade the client. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, ideally, and in most in a functional system, like it would not be the case that a client is updated to code that miners are not mining. Like something has to go really wrong for miners to be like rejecting, like not upgrading. Like that's a DAO level, that's an Ethereum Classic chain split level problem. Because then you will have two clients out there and miners, if there's a lot of them that don't want to upgrade, that will cause a chain split. So really we never want to reach that point. And this rough consensus mechanism where everyone's on board and everyone agrees to do it is basically the best way we figured out as to avoid that situation. So yes, it's true that miners ultimately get the veto by not upgrading their client, but hopefully that never happens, basically.
So I'm curious then because the client is also under the same organization as Ethereum Classic. It's all under the same. It's the same ECIPs. Like Core Geeth is right there, and I assume Core Geeth is still the leading client, right?
Yeah, I believe that that's the most commonly used one.
Right. So I'm just asking because what is the access different between repositories within the Ethereum Classic organization, or would the same people who have the ability to change ECIPs be able to, kind of push something through into the core Geeth? Like, is it more protected? Like, what's the deal there?
Well, it's kind of separated out. So the Ethereum Classic GitHub org is kind of like a community thing. In reality, Cody is the main admin of that. He has the ability to add and remove people from the various groups in there. So he's a good kind of caretaker and has been fair about who gets to edit stuff, and the whole process kind of relies on neutral administration. Separate, and this is for historical reasons, I believe, there's an ET Labs core/core geth repo, which is where the code for the most popular client is. And I'm not sure exactly who owns that repo, but Diego is publishing to there. And I think it's good that these are separated because it kind of creates checks and balances. And same goes for the
I
like
s-
the domain
that's
name is owned
interesting.
by different people. Yeah.
Who do you think, like, it shows who the contributors are to that repo, but I like, how do people get access to that? I guess if I see it's through pull requests, um but I assume that there's either a set of people that have been approved, but it's strange because GitHub doesn't tell you anything about these things. So that's for me a little bit of a transparency question that I would like to kind of see kind of changed over the next year or two for Ethereum Classic, is to really see who has those roles over the client, especially since we're using something like GitHub, which is sort of a central place because that's where all the clients are maintained and where all the releases are pushed. So it does have, I understand that we do have like a rough consensus mechanism, but it would be the path of least resistance for someone who would want to push something through. If they had the right people, if they had the right approvers, they could theoretically get something to push to core Geeth. But I did not know that the releases were made on a separate one from the one under Ethereum Classic, and that Ethereum Classic one is just a fork of the one under ETC Labs core. But yeah, I would love to know like who's running that.
Yeah. I believe I don't think this is hidden information. You can probably, I mean, I'm pretty sure Bob Samuel would know the answer to those questions, and I can ask him if you like. You're right that it would be great if this was documented.
He's
But
not getting paid
you know,
to answer those kind of questions anymore, though. So good
right.
luck.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that these things can change over time, and it's difficult to figure out. But the fact that they are open source projects is a massive, like, even if those repositories were compromised and pushed out malicious versions, it would not be like the a game over scenario because the community would just say, hey, like these have been taken over and they're clearly malicious. So please don't use these. And here's the alternative fork uploaded to either a different repo on GitHub or even a completely different platform like GitLab. So there's not really that much incentive to take over these things. I mean, there's some advantage and it could be used maliciously in the short term, but it doesn't provide any like serious long-term threat to the protocol, I think, because they are easily replaceable.
So, with your personal experience, would you say that a chain takeover would be near to impossible with but by basically just having permissions that other people don't and not really like getting consensus from the community and just kind of trying to push it through? Like, would you say that
Yeah.
that's effectively impossible because the client has been replicated so many times that, you know, at the moment people start noticing that there's a change here and that it's screwing people's clients and they're going to an upgrade that people didn't approve, that they're going to just use another fork of the client? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And that's why the rough consensus part is really important. If there's like a new version that comes out and miners, they're gonna be checking whether they should upgrade or not. They're gonna check different news feeds and social media. And if there's like significant like call outs against it, then they're gonna then be more asking questions and like investigating what's going on here and who can I trust. And the default option most of the time is to do nothing. So in order to push a malicious change, then they really need everyone else to be quiet and not do anything about it. And even if like the apparent majority are on board, if a significant minority are against it, it's almost certainly going to create a chain split, as you can see with Ethereum Classic. So the risk of a chain split is enough to prevent that kind of malicious acting because it destroys value for both sides.
I think it's interesting the way you put it, but now that I think of it, the reason why people would the incentive for miners to change to upgrade their client is so that just in the case that all the other clients have been upgraded and like the majority of clients have been upgraded and they are like the last 1 or 5%, they will be basically on an uncle chain that no longer whatever earnings that they have will no longer actually reward them. So it kind of makes this this effect where if people want to make changes to the chain, then they have to have everybody on board, or else anybody who installs that client will effectively be kind of punished for not being on board with everybody else. It's not a direct slashing system, but it's more of like an indirect slashing, similar to how Ethereum runs today. And I don't know if that's by design or if that's by coincidence, but it does end up creating this effect where people are not going to want to install a client that has been poorly marketed, that isn't something that everybody's talking about. People would rather stay on the client until they know that everybody's moving to the other client, and then when they know that everybody's moving to the other client, then they have a very good incentive to do so, because if they don't, they lose out on their mining rewards. Is that correct, or will they still
Yep.
rewards?
You hit the nail on the head, and it really is this. One of the topics I wanted to maybe introduce into this discussion was about signaling and how, like in Bitcoin, for example, there's this idea of a user activated soft fork or hard fork, whereby if a certain number of people have upgraded, then it gets activated, but only if that certain threshold is reached, and otherwise everyone just defaults to the existing thing. So that's kind of similar to what you're talking about, but in a more formalized way. So that might be another useful thing for such contentious, potentially hard forks could be, you know, figured out whether they're receiving enough support to implement.
Well, I think it's just good to know that there's checks and balances to these things, and it's a very natural. As I said, I don't know if it's by design, but it just ends up working out because of how the client replication system works and how people will get punished if they don't upgrade their client, and if the client is not a good upgrade, then then they will be slashed effectively for that. But I think how long do these calls usually go? I think we're probably getting to the longer end of these now.
Yeah, that is a good call, and I think we should wrap up. It's getting quite late.
Yeah.
I'm in Far East time zone, so it's almost past my bedtime. So yeah, thank you for joining the call. It's been a lot better having participants. I originally started the call and it was just me on my own for 10 minutes, so I'm glad that that some people turned up. And I
It's my
appreciate
pleasure.
your
Thanks for hosting, dude.
participation. Yeah, of course. And yeah, let's do it again. For now, let's wrap things up. And yeah, I'll post this on YouTube. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening and attending, and we'll see you at the next Ethereum Classic Community Call. Thanks. Bye bye. Very good call.